Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today we are going to study about the types of speciation. So what is speciation? Speciation is nothing but the formation of species. Species are group of interbreeding individual. Okay, so the allopatric today we are going to study about the types of speciation. So in that allopatric, sympatric and Paeprapatric speciation. So allopatric speciation. Allos means other. Patra means fatherland. So this word having a Greek origin. So the population split into two geographically isolated population by habitat fragmentation or mountain formation, continental drift. So the population split into two geographically isolated populations. So the reason is geographical barrier. So it may be habitat fragmentation, mountain formation, continental drift, or river flow. So this isolated population then undergo genotypic and phenotypic divergence as selective pressure, genetic drift, and mutations. So what is divergence? Divergence is nothing but evolutionary tendency or process in which animal or the plant that are descended from a common ancestral evolve into a different form when living under different conditions. So here when the isolated population came back into contact with the parent population, isolated population was reproductively isolated. So this we took here the example of salamanders in California. So this is the parent population. When the population came across to the geographical barrier, so this population is divided into two population, that is parent population and isolated population. So this area that indicates the geographical area. So this population independently undergo the genetic drift. So the salamander population that undergo independently the genetic drift. So what is genetic drift? Genetic drift is nothing but the small sudden change in a small population. Again, so when the geographical barrier is removed and the isolated population come in contact with the parent population, that time population is reproductively isolated. So the main reason here the interbreeding is totally prevented and gene flow is totally prevented. So what is gene flow? Gene flow is nothing but the transfer of allele from one population to the other population is known as gene flow. So gene flow is totally prevented. Next, sympatric speciation. So again, this word having the Greek origin. So sympatra means living in the same homeland. So the formation of new species through a single ancestral species or from a single ancestral species. So here the new species as well as old species they occupy the same geographic location. So sympatric speciation, new species can evolve without geographical isolation. Example is hawthron fly. So as we know that the hawthorn fly is the native of US. So apple had been introduced to US by immigrants of North America in 19th century. So the hawthorn fly is a parent population. Apple fly is new population. A species can evolve without geography. So here the main diverge force because of population is evolved is mutation or the genetic change, though the population that live in the same geographic area but they are reproductively isolated. So here are the examples of sympatric speciation, hawthorns fly and the apple flies. So this post shift from hawthorn to the apple may be the first step toward the sympatric speciation in a fewer than 200 years. Some genetic differences between these two groups flies have evolved. So there is differences between two flies evolved. Okay, so hawthorn fly, so there is a mating behavioral differences as well as a mating differences. So hawthorn fly, male and female, they prefer the opposite partner from the hawthorn flies only. And here in the apple flies, male or female, they prefer their mate, male or female, that feed on apple flies only. So next is Paeprapatric speciation. So para means near, patric means homeland. So the neighboring population become a distinct species while maintaining contact through hybrid zones. So here the reproductive isolation without geographical isolation is possible. Okay, so there is a gene flow between two population and a strong differential selection due to this different species develop. So here in Paeprapatric speciation, so the main diverged force is a natural selection. Now, as we know that what is natural selection? Natural selection means some selective pressures or the selection that some selective pressure that applied on that particular population. For example, some mutations occur or some recombinations occur from that mutation or recombination, some variations occur. If the variation is favorable, then the variation are adapted. If the advantages that variation are advantages, then and then only variation are adapted. Otherwise that population or that species will perish, okay, or will not survive. Only advantageous population only advantageous selection, advantageously natural selected population will survive, and the population or the variation that are disadvantageous and that are wiped out, that species are wiped out. So only the adaptable only the adapted, only the advantages this natural selection advantages, then and then only they acquire or adapted by the population, otherwise population will perish or the wipe out. Here, so Paeprapatric speciation. So the individual are more likely to mate with their geographic neighbors than with the individual in different part of population areas. Here you can see this is the original species, and these are the daughter species with hybrid. There is uh, there is a gene flow. As we know that what is a gene flow? Gene flow is nothing but the transfer of one allele from one population to the other population. So here in Paeprapatric speciation there is gene flow. Okay, so there is not there is um, gene flow, that is allele from one population transferred to the different or the neighboring population. So you can see here this is the diagram. Okay, this diagram shows the species 1 and species 2 because of geographical barrier. So this type of isolations are known as allopatric speciation. Again you can see here in sympatric speciation. So what is sympatric speciation? So the species that evolve in a same geographical area is known as sympatric speciation. Example is hawthron fly. So you can see here is a species 1, the green one is species 1 and the blue one is species 2. So the species 1 and species 2 that live in a same area without geographical isolation, but then also the species are reproductively isolated. So next is Paeprapatric speciation. So in Paeprapatric speciation, so species 1 and species 2 is there, but there is a gene flow between the species 1 and species 2. Because of this species 1 and species 2, there is a formation of this hybrid zone, and this hybrid zone forms. Okay, and this hybrid zone forms. Okay, so this is in case of Paeprapatric speciation. For example, we took here the example of mosquitoes, that is as we know that the DDT that spread on the mosquitoes, but some mosquito they are resistant to the DDT, and this is the example of Paeprapatric speciation. Means uh, uh, those mosquito population that survive when the resistance developed against the DDT. But the population which having the resistance with the DDT is living with the mosquitoes with without DDT resistance. Means both population 1 and population 2 is living in the same area again. So thank you. All the images I took from the Google search. Thank you.